Hello, I'm Sallyanne Ashley. I'm a UK-based abstract artist, and I also run a course for artists and creatives called Creative Shift. Creative Shift is a 10-week program based on my own creative practice of navigating the shifts in my work. Each time I become stuck in the studio or frustrated, I now have a framework that I can apply each time my work evolves. I've now shared my framework with many artists and witnessed numerous shifts on both the personal and practical level. I hear artists talking about how free they feel in their work, how much more confident they feel, how courageous they are in the studio. So if you're wondering if creative shifts for you this year, I've interviewed some previous course members and asked them to share a little bit about their experience on the course and how it impacted their practice, in the hope that it'll answer some questions that you have. I hope you enjoy the videos. And if you have any questions, please contact me on the links below. Thank you. Today I'm chatting with Sallyanne Sims. Sallyanne took Creative Shift with me earlier in the year, and I've invited her here today to chat to me a little bit about her experience and how it impacted her creative practice. So hi Sallyanne, thank you for joining me.
Hello, Sallyanne.
Hello, fellow Sallyanne.
Yes.
If you could just start by telling me a little bit about your creative practice and how long you've been creating for.
I've been creating since about 1994. I began to want to learn how to draw. Specifically, I wanted to learn how to draw and paint horses. And so I began on my own, and then I developed a relationship and a friendship with an equestrian artist, and I kind of had an old-fashioned apprenticeship almost. I got to work with her in her studio. She was an oil painter, and that was kind of the beginning of it. And I soon realized that I didn't necessarily want to just do horses. So my first creative shift was to expand my subject matter. So I've been painting on and off since then. And then about 10 years ago, I started to work in acrylics, and I couldn't get it to stay on any surface at all for a while. So I started working with that. And then just recently, around the time of the pandemic, I started to work more with water media and acrylic again. And then I started to kind of bloom out into these other directions. So, so it's been like multi-decadal, and I've had, like for instance, this painting in the back of me with the bird and the young man. That's from like the early 2000s.
Oh wow!
And the one next to it is kind of more my abstract movement. So I'm kind of in that process of working with moving towards abstract, but I also feel like I still have a representational vein in there, which is one of the reasons I took your course. So
well, I was just about to say, what drew you? What was your reason for joining Creative Shift?
Well, I had taken Louise's classes back when Find Your Joy and Find Your Voice were the last year that they were separate courses. And so I had been working on transitioning to kind of an abstract landscape direction. And it's so funny because I kept finding that if I told myself to sit down and make 6 landscapes that look such and such, they just wouldn't do it. So, and I began to feel this voice in me that was separate from my directional voice. I don't know what you call it, but I kind of felt like this excitement around tapping into something that I really hadn't, I think I'd been aware of in decades past, but really hadn't tapped into. So I thought that's something I could explore with the tools you were offering.
Okay, so more of an intuitive call, I'd say, or you had a pull or a nudge to go towards something else, but you hadn't yet started exploring it.
Yeah, I'd say I just started exploring it, and was having the usual struggles you have, like everyone with their, well, once you start abstracting the landscape, how do you do that, and why are you doing it, and then it leads to bigger questions, and it's almost like you need a vessel to hold those questions in, so that you don't go off kilter.
Yeah.
I know I did anyway. So anyway, that's why I chose to do creative shift. And I felt like from what I had seen of your courses that you have a really positive, open energy that really spoke to me, because I think when I first started working in charcoal and oil, the person that I apprenticed with, she was really good and really helped me gain a certain amount of self-confidence. And then somehow it got competitive. And I don't know why, because I didn't feel competitive, because I could see us doing totally different things. And
Okay.
so I kind of, I think the art world felt more competitive back then. And I think now it's more open, and there's more sharing, and there's more working together, which I really appreciate.
Yes. Yeah, it does feel a bit more relaxed in that way. And I think it's when we open up to what, like you said, when we all feel certain vulnerabilities and we all feel certain struggles, but before we share those, nobody knows that. Nobody knows how anybody else is feeling. So I think you're right. It's more open now, and it allows other people, I think, allows us just behind the scenes a little bit and into our processes, and therefore into us how we think and feel as artists. So
Hmm.
there's a lot more that's kind of accessible now, I think.
Yes, way more accessible. And also, I think I had to just really put aside the mindset of like, you start a painting by drawing charcoal on canvas, and then you lay down washes, and then you build some, then you do this, and then you do that. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's if you want to paint a certain way. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
just, I don't know, it just seemed to have such a hold on me that I was struggling against it. And I'm like, I really need to just see what this is, and work through it. And now that I've worked since your course ended, for instance, that painting behind me there with the, can't really see the whole thing, but
Oh, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like that. It started out as a kind of a loose landscape that was the end of a peninsula, where I had taken a photograph of all this blooming goldenrod, and you can see the ocean. And I had drawn, I had decided I was going to do a series of really loose landscapes on my way towards abstraction, and then it just went off in a different direction, and it wasn't totally, it went through about three three or four radically different things before I settled on this, which I really liked, because one of the intentions I had taking your class is I'm really interested in the earth, sky, water interface, and how that shows up in different ways and how they intermix with each other. So um, I'm kind of not knowing how I'm going to do this, because it's if I set too strong an intention, there's this other part of me that just does something else.
Yeah.
But there's also, you want to do kind of in the direction that you want. So you have to figure out how
Yes.
to manage that with, and still make yourself be happy when you're working. Because I had originally, when I ended Louise's class, I wanted to paint in acrylic really big, potentially on panels. And I found I just don't like to throw that much of acrylic paint around in that capacity. I don't like it. So I'm kind of like, why did I want to do that? And so I'm trying to, like, instead of saying, well, that didn't work, I'm stepping back and saying maybe there was another reason behind why I was hooking onto that, because it was maybe something pretty clear to work towards.
Yeah.
So that's helping me refine my intention by, okay, maybe you don't want to do that,
Yeah.
and why, and then where to go next. And
Yeah. Just asking and just making a few inquiries into your decisions and your thought processes, because it helps to guide you, doesn't it? You might not have
yeah,
an immediate answer, but it's very rare the answer is here. It's normally a little step and then another step, and then you're
yeah.
slowly kind of carving out this pathway for yourself. So what was your experience of creative shift?
Um, I really liked it. I'm really thankful that you had us do all the exercises, because I did fill this notebook and
Amazing.
I just reviewed it this week, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad she had us do all this stuff, because although some of the exercises and some of the things that I did, I probably won't follow that path, but there's some basic elements of it that I'm like, yes, that's still something that's important to me. And it also reminded me of the things that you can go look at again when you're having struggles. So I think I really enjoyed it. I mean, I love to write, I love to think, and I love to make art. So for me, it was like a really a really good combination of that. And now it's kind of like, because I've been working with that, I'm having this sort of voice come out that's not, I don't know, it's not verbal, it's not
Yeah.
linear. And I'm really like, wow, this is maybe what art has been about for me since I liked Van Gogh when I was a teenager. Like, maybe this is what it's about.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe this is what's been going on under the surface all the time. But
Yeah,
until we know how to access that, until we know how to dip in using these different tools, it can feel quite
yeah,
odd. And like you say, with the exercises, I think I'm sort of state through the course, you know, this is a way that I found, like, all of those tools work for me because obviously it's my process. But the
right.
way, hopefully, that I shared them, exactly like you said, you can take some of it, like the core idea, but I think we saw a lot in the course, people saying, well, that particular thing didn't really work. However, it led to this, and I found my own
Hmm.
way of doing it, which for
Yeah,
me is brilliant. It's what Creative Shift's all about, because we're all wildly different in our own practice and processes. But what we want to do is all feel like we're progressing. So it's that
right.
opening up ways to help you to really look what works for me. You know, I can take a little bit of that and a little bit of that, and kind of, you know, make up your own recipe of things that are going to help you over the hurdles. Like you say, when you look back in your book, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
remember that and remember that. You can dip back into.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember specifically you had done a video, I don't know, it might have been a year and a half ago, and you had like these little scraps of paper with little marks on them, and you're like, I'm so excited about this. Like, this is, I love this, and I don't care what anyone thinks. And you held it up proudly, and I'm like going, that's exactly it. Like, y- I think so. You know, there's so many people taking courses, and they're trying to latch on to like artists that they like and figure out how they can translate what that is into them, and it like never works. Um, and it's like, what is actually something that you like, and how can you work with that? And now I have these little bitty scraps of things like I sanded a painting, and the contrast of the purple sandpaper and the green paint is like, wow, you know, that could be some sort of a seed of something.
Yeah.
Um, and also, one of the things that I started working on this spring is working with more fluid paints and acrylic ink. And I love, it's sort of a kind of a sumi ink feeling without having any control. And I keep coming up with these, they look like mystical birds and flying forms. And I'm like, you know, that's really
Mm.
excites me. I don't know exactly how to do anything with it, because if I try to paint them bigger,
Yes.
they're going to lose their life. So I have to
Yeah.
sit with it and figure it out. And I'm like, no, I want to know right
Yeah. Yeah.
now. Like,
But it's through that, isn't it? That process of discovery, that we only come across these things, and it's like
yeah,
how you say, people, we take art classes and technique classes, and I think there's space for all of that when we're learning. But there comes a time when
yeah,
it's like you need to go off on your own and do this like deeper exploration to make discoveries like you've just made with mixing those two together. Because
yeah,
I don't know if there's a teacher out there doing that, but
right.
only through your own explorations can you think, oh, I like that, and then I like that, and you start creating your own process for this.
Yeah. And you have to start building up the courage to just see what's there,
Yeah.
and not look for the outcomes, and
Yeah.
not try to make a certain thing, because I think that's the part where people get kind of scared and want to run back and have someone tell them it's okay and you're on a path and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I mean, if I hadn't, that painting right behind me, I was so mad at it because it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. And then I just worked in a whole different way. I let go. And um it it it's hard to teach that. But it's really nice to have a place where you can know that you can talk about that with other people, and they'll understand. Because I mean, you can talk with supportive non-artists and they're like, oh, that's interesting. But I think I've seen that so many times in these classes where people are like, well, this is about the 10th rendition of it, and now I finally like it. And I think a lot of times people just quit way too early.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. So can I ask, did anything shift for you during the course?
I think it was the start of hearing that voice in me that was um, not a voice meaning your style, but a voice meaning this is this is the kind of art that you really like, that really makes your heart sing, and doing this is not going to be a process where you can sit down and say, I'm going to draw this and paint with this and do this. It's more of holding the intention and then working with it. So I think that was probably the dawn of that. And then in working since last fall, I've been trying to develop that a little more.
Yeah.
So that was so that's a big shift, because even now, if I have days where I'm not really thrilled, I have things to go back to in my book.
Yeah.
And I can also just sort of see how I'm framing it in a negative way sometimes and just coming to the wrong conclusion,
Oh, interesting.
or an arbitrary conclusion.
Yeah.
And I think the process of working through dissolving the perceptions I had from working more traditionally in oil decades ago, that was helped by taking the class too.
Mm.
I always think about Matisse, how he spent so much time like trying to get rid of his academic background and scraping paintings off like 20 times.
I
So
think a lot of this comes down to our own awareness, like you mentioned before. And it's like sometimes we're either not aware of our actions and behaviors and how that's impacting our practice, or we are aware a little bit of a voice, but we choose to shut it down. So
yeah,
it's I think what Creative Shift does, as well as kind of these tools that we're talking about for our art practice, it's kind of like they translate over to life as well. And it's just this whole well, the feedback I sort of get is this like mindful approach, and then it's
right.
acknowledging what comes and kind of honoring that and working from that space. Like you say, it's no longer just like, okay, that's not working, da 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 da, and sort of shut things
Yeah,
away. It's kind of like,
yeah.
okay, it's more of an inquisitive approach to be like, well, what is this offering me, and what can I take from this, and
Hmm.
uh, sort of building it up that way.
Yeah. And I think just also in terms of the life art overlap is I realized like a month or so ago, I have like three major things going on, and maybe some people can relate to this if they have like other issues like family issues or health issues or whatever. But I do consulting in conservation and climate change adaptation, and I'm also a writer. In fact, I'm working on a suspense series that focuses on an artist.
Oh, wow.
So that feeds back and forth with my work, and then I have the art. And I used to be frustrated because I was taking classes, and I'm like, well, I want to end up with these 6 paintings that I can take to this gallery, and why haven't I done that yet? And I have this crazy spirit running around my studio making me do something else when I came in. The other thing. And so I realized a month ago that I have this really strong push to get the writing. I'm working on a series of books, and I'm working on a children's book. I really have a strict understanding of what that schedule is to get out. And I sort of let the pressure off of myself with getting the art out, because, I have sold work in the past, and when that's a focus, I can go back and do that. But right now, I don't want to keep trying to make a bunch of similar things so that they look the same, so that I have a little set to take somewhere. If that's really not me, I need to find that me first. So that's been hard, because there's this feeling of like, I have to package everything and it all has to make sense. And so
Okay.
But
So
I realized how much pressure I was putting on myself because my writing is like taking up a lot of emotional energy, and
yeah,
so is my consulting work. So I'm like, okay, as time goes on, you're going to be able to do more with the art and less with some of the other stuff. So you have to be patient,
yeah.
basically.
And it's, yeah, I guess part of the framework that I share of Creative Shift is partly that of managing your practice in a way that really works for you. You know,
Yeah,
you can't do everything all at once. There's got to be some sort of hierarchy that takes place sometimes, and maybe, like you say, maybe it's family issues, maybe it's work, maybe it's something else. But it's kind of like, how and where can we fit our practice in, and staying connected to our practice, you know. And it sounds like you have lots of creative other things
yeah.
creative going on as well. So just on that note about time and things, can you remember how much time do you think you allocated to the course during the time we were together?
It was probably, I would say it was probably 3 to 5 hours a week, but probably more because it sort of melded in with my regular art practice. So, I do the writing and I do some of the things that were coming out of that, and then I'd work on some of the stuff that I already had going on. So it all kind of, it's hard to like it's hard to like separate them out. So
Yeah,
probably, you know 3 to 7 hours a week, but that was all doing extra things too.
yeah. Okay, and out of
And
the
I think the other thing too, like you said, the part about staying connected to your practice, that's been really helpful, because if I'm feeling in a yucky mood, like, and I know that I have a project I want to do, I'll just start the first two steps of it and just have it there on my table, looking at me and going, yeah, that was fun. Remember that? So that if I come
yeah,
by, I'm like, okay, now I'll just pick a palette, like I don't have to start, but now I'll pick a palette and lay that out.
yeah,
So that
yeah,
when I'm feeling, better, I can jump in more,
yeah.
with more time. That really helps.
And which out of the tools that I shared, or which out of the process, would you say was the most impactful for you, or which has been the most beneficial for your practice? You mentioned there about staying connected to your practice, so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, and the noticing, I
okay.
noticed that when I went back through looking at the exercise where we have all those photos and we're like, well, what do you pick, and what are the similarities between them? Um, because I like to work in a bunch of different mediums, so I'm always looking for like what's the thread, and then yeah, and that's part of what I'm developing. I think in shifting is like I have I have a certain vision I'm trying to go for. And I don't think of it in terms of like, this is an acrylic painting or this is an ink painting and a multimedia painting. It's like, what's the best thing for what I'm feeling right now, since I have more of a technical mastery of acrylic paint than I had 10 years ago, I know that I could make something transparent and shiny and what to put over it so that it gets me where I want to go,
Yeah,
which I didn't have before, which was really frustrating at the beginning. So, yeah, I think taking some technique courses really help at the beginning when you're
yeah.
starting a new medium. But I think that's probably the noticing. And I remember the last week of the course, I was like, okay, the framework. This is why I took the course. Like, let's go. Because I'm a synthesizer person. So I'm like, I want to see how this all works. And then I want to pass.
And how did you find that last week? Did it fit together for you? Did you create your personal framework of how this is all looking?
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure I got it all that week, but I went back and kept working on it. And after I've read it over this week, I want to go back and um, probably revise it, which I think makes a good springboard
Yeah,
with the learning, because um, I'm kind of heading towards. I'm kind of heading towards this abstract way still. I still like that, but I also miss um, doing some more, not hyper realistic, but realistic things that have kind of more of a spiritual, stylized look to it. So, um, I think instead of fighting, like, let's just keep with the abstract. I don't know. It's a really, it's a really interesting thing trying to do abstract, but it can bring up some kind of scary things. You kind of feel like you're going off a cliff.
Yeah.
Um, and it's
Yeah.
good, but like I see a lot of people go, like, they sort of go back and forth while they're working it out because it helps to just feel grounded in something.
Yes.
And then I think that the more representational and the abstract feed each other as you would develop both of them. So
Yeah. And I think it's hopefully the introspection that we go through in Creative Shift offers you the sort of ways of thinking about your practice and be able to identify that if you are working on some realism and then you are working on some abstract, it's like have they both got a space in your practice? And yes, it seems like they have. And do they need to be merged? And can they stay
mhm,
apart? So it just opens
yeah.
up these conversations for you to hopefully clarify to yourself, because they're both ticking some sort of box for you. You enjoy this for this reason, and you enjoy
Hmm.
this for this reason. So because we're trying to identify what your personal practice is, this kind of all goes into the pot, doesn't it? For you to sort of sit with and think what role does each of these play in your work?
Yeah, I have a I have a series of four, I guess you'd call it a quad tick, and it's a cradled 1 foot square panels. And I started a long time ago. I had this theme of Lake Superior, the Great Lakes in the United States, a series of kind of rocks, ice, wind, and water were the theme of the different ones, but I envisioned it as being very abstract. And so I started in on them, and then um, I couldn't get the ice one to like be the kind of ice I wanted. And I was getting kind of frustrated. And then I was like falling back on drawing the shoreline and like, like okay, okay. So I ended up just sort of, I knew I couldn't just, these are four square, 1 foot square paintings. And I feel like I've been working on them for so long. And in the past, I might have gone, oh, just finish them. You're like, why are you like, but I have them out and I want them all to resonate with each other. So I leave them out in a square. And I worked on the ice one the other day and I made it a whole different kind of ice. And it started to go together and it started to have a linear graphic look in some areas and sort of a lot of depth. And so I realized it was way, again, I had to slow down and I have to decide. And it is really emerging actually of both now that I talk about it, because
Yeah.
it has that stylized look and also an abstract look.
Mm.
And you can also project what you want on it. And it's like, it's really difficult to paint like that, but it's really fun when you do it.
When you achieve
Yeah,
what you're looking for. I think that's the hopefully that's part of the learnings about this the sort of road that we're building for ourselves. It's not just like we get this thought and we want to be here really quickly. It's like
yeah,
we
yeah,
might want to be there really quickly, but where are
right,
we now? And this is the whole thing of start from where we are and what does that
yeah,
bridge look like? And so all of these things, and actually when we get halfway across the bridge we might actually change what we think we want.
right. Or
So
the bridge might fall apart.
or the bridge might crumble a bit, yeah.
If
Um,
we're gonna get Buddhist here.
yeah. But
Yeah,
hopefully, I think with this mindfulness and awareness, at least if we do feel the shifts and movements along the way, it's better to feel like we can understand it and we're sort of not in control of it, but we have a better idea instead of it just falling away beneath us and us thinking, well, what the hell now? At least we've got some anchor points, like all of those in your book that you've got
yeah,
anchor points to go back to, that we think, hang on a minute, I wasn't too far back when I felt really grounded. And let me just go back to
yeah.
that place and reach out again from there.
Right, and also just psychologically, you're not categorizing it as, well, I failed at this intent that I went out on. It's like,
Yes.
no, you really learned a lot, and that
Yeah.
was how you're going forward, and you could either pursue it or and work with it or not, depending on how you think it'll serve you, rather than just going either running away from it scared, or going, by gum, I'm going to make this work.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a big part of
Yeah.
acceptance in that as well, isn't there? And
Yeah.
just being like, okay, well, that happened. And now I'm going to, go off this way. Like there's nothing is kind of a waste of time because everything
Yeah.
you're learning all the time,
Yeah.
whichever
And I
branch.
think I think that's an area where students come in and they're really worried about that sometimes. Like, what if I waste materials? And,
Yeah.
like, what if I waste time? And what if nobody likes it? And it's like, okay, but try not to focus on that
Yeah.
because it's sort of blocking you from seeing what you like. And part of the teaching too is like, people may like an artist and they want them to tell them how they did that. And part of how they did that was figuring out how to do it.
Yeah. But
And there is no step by step. So
yeah, and the thing is, I think one of the things I always, one of the things I say in the course, remember the week about where we look at the play week, and it's like reframing this uncertainty into possibility. It's like we might go into something and want to know where it's going. We want to be certain about it, but
yeah,
actually, by having that mindset, we're limiting what's possible.
right,
Because what could happen on the way, if we just
right,
allowed ourselves to like splay off and go into this direction or this direction, if we've
right.
got an end point, like I need my painting to look, this way, or we want it to be like so and so's, we're taking that journey away from ourselves of
Hmm.
what could it be? Who knows? If we allow ourselves, we could create something that we've never created before. Um, so yeah,
Right.
that just
Yeah, and I think for the people that are trying to go to art to deal with some of the global uncertainty, there may be a feeling like, I'm not sure I want that much uncertainty.
yeah,
But it's a different kind because if you start to face it, you can make yourself stay in the present in a way that's nourishing and not worrying about this and that.
yeah,
And that's how you're seeing how it works for you.
yeah. Okay, so if there's somebody who's watching this now and thinking about taking Creative Shift next year and they're not sure, what advice would you give to them?
I would say kind of feel where you're at right now, and feel if going through a process of helping you understand what you're doing and where you're going, and if you have blocks or stumbles that you're needing to address or really wanting to address or feel like it's stopping you from going forward, I think I would definitely consider doing the course. Or um, if you feel kind of like you're going in multiple directions, and you want to kind of think about, well, I like this and I like that and I like that, but like I can't do them all. And what is it about them that I like? Because for me, it was just really helpful to kind of put myself back in, not control, but like it is about my preferences and it
Yeah.
is about the way I want to work. And that's how I'm going to make the best art.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's a feeling that like everyone else is doing this and that. And, when I started taking these courses, like everyone was painting kind of large acrylic abstracts in a certain way. And I think you saw them all over the internet, and people then started to want to just paint that way. And it's like, why are you doing that?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not your way. I mean, it could be your way, but you're going to do it a little different.
Mhm.
So I think it's kind of it's a good opportunity to sit down and figure out what you're about as an artist and where you want to move forward.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Figure out, yeah, who you are as an artist and where you
Yeah.
want to go. Um, but you just prompted me to say something then. What was Oh, yes, because there's a difference, I think, in just feeling like we're being progressive. It's like if we feel like we're on a good path, and like you say, I forgot what you said, but something prompted me in your words then to say it. It's a very different feeling to just creating and not knowing kind of a rough path. We don't have to know exactly the painting
Hmm.
or how we're going to get there, but it's nice to have this like roadmap that we think we're heading in a direction. So it kind of offers you clarity around those ideas. Oh, that was it when you were saying if you've got quite a few things you want to work on. So it's
Right.
A, probably quite overwhelming, and B, you don't know which strand to kind of take first. So we sort of sit with it. But yeah, hopefully creative shift.
Yeah. Or maybe buy a new art supply.
Or maybe buy a new art supply and add to that.
Go, maybe that's the answer. Maybe gouache is the answer, you know, like
Yes, yeah, there's always something the answer, yeah, not to look inside ourselves.
yeah. So but you know, but there's a balance between, yeah, it's fun to experiment with new things, but you
Yeah,
know, and like you said, you know, you do have these touchstones to come back to, so it's not like a totally like you're in a cave and there's no light anywhere. Um,
yeah.
so that's
Oh,
yeah, that's what I'd recommend. I mean, that's helpful for that was helpful for me in trying to decide whether to take the course. I also think you have a really good positive energy and you're very generous.
oh,
Um,
amazing, thank you.
so, you know, I think that's really helpful for people. It was especially helpful for me that was coming from this like kind of isolated competitive background and um it helps to realize that there's so many of us, and that's another thing about these classes is you're connected to so many people
Yes,
around the globe after you're done, and you know, you kind of have a little sangha of people that are interested in the same type of personal growth and artistic growth,
yes, yeah,
even though we're all on different paths.
yeah, yeah, wonderful. Okay, well, thank you so much, Sallyanne, for taking the time to chat to me today. I've loved hearing about your journey again, so yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having this opportunity to talk. I enjoyed it.
Okay, take care, see you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye, bye.